which is in the front row right now.
I have it.
This new addendum?
No, just to make copies if you want.
Do we want to make copies?
No, I'm fine. I mean, I've already read it. I'm just wondering if
Does anybody on the board have any questions about the addendum? Or it looks like you're developing some. You want a few minutes?
What's the rest of
I have a letter here from Walter Kudnahowski that missed the last hearing. While the visual impacts are first and most often mentioned when the subject of cell towers comes up, visual impact is for many of us not the most important subject. The view of a tower is too easily and inappropriately, in my studied view, branded as primarily or only as a NIMBY response, not in my backyard. On the other hand, while health and other impacts might best hold more persuasion for cell tower location and permitting, the visual impact should not be dismissed nor slighted. What, if hidden within this topic, are the seeds of real and pervasive concern? You did write that. What is at stake within the Spruce Corner Tower is a more insidious problem, the incremental erosion of our precious conception of a natural, protected, and sustaining western Massachusetts landscape. The piecemeal erosion happens with one road frontage home at a time, one stone wall or roadside tree removed, or one cell tower constructed at a time. Henry David Thoreau comes to mind. Our village life would stagnate if it were not for the unexplored forests and meadows which surround. We need the tonic of wilderness, ... At the same time that we are earnest to explore and learn all things, we require that all things be mysterious and unexplorable, that land and sea be infinitely wild, unsurveyed and unfathomed by us, because unfathomable, we can never have enough of nature. We need to witness our own limits transgressed and some life pasturing freely where we never wander. One reason, that's the end of the quote, one reason I believe that we are so concerned with our wooded hilltops and related distance views is the very fact that they are natural and largely without human artifact. As soon as we adorn the skyline ridgeline with symbolic technology, cell tower or wind turbine or transmission line, we drastically alter and replace our cherished and comforting concept of our western Massachusetts wooded hills. These hilltops and ridgelines are among the most prominent features in our landscape because of the consistent contrast of a light sky and often dark earth or trees. We must also remember ridgeline hiking, which so many of us are prone to do, makes other ridgelines that much more visually prominent at precisely when we expect and seek natural reverie. Cell towers, as highly contrasting made features, become an unavoidable focus in a landscape that is vast, broad, and until now unmeasured and without a single focus. Our views currently and often go to infinity along with our thoughts. A cell tower introduces an element of unknown scale and size that instantly and forever diminishes our operating and sustaining image of a limitless landscape, one as big as our imaginations can muster. With towers or structures, our cherished and sanity-sustaining world instantly becomes smaller and less soothing. Such cell towers, even single towers, thus easily replace or seriously maim our real and imagined perception of our protected world. Along with so many Ashfield citizens, I stop daily and focus on common and ordinary landscapes both immediately at my feet and on the distant horizon. These nature viewings do not demand my critical eye, and instantly accepted by that fact, they are comforting in a world where human interventions are almost always flawed. I am often and predictably mesmerized by the naturally derived beauty that surrounds us, be it large or small. Nature will bear the closest inspection. She invites us to lay our eye level with our smallest leaf and take an insect view of its plane. Henry David again. I, however, could and would not stop and contemplate a cell tower nor expect such complete gratification. Attempting to mask such a tower in even the best human version of plastic tree limbs is yet similar to placing a colored Band-Aid on a permanent sore. For me, that would make the imposition even more callous and prominent. There's something inherently wrong with even needing to camouflage or conceal a cell tower. There are now in my long experience 2 critical assessments of any size entity such as a teapot, airplane, or cell tower. We must assess that entity independently for its inherent beauty and cohesiveness in relation to its function, and secondly, we must assess it in relation to its proposed contextual placement. A handsome modern teapot can be out of place in a historic and rusted kitchen. A well-designed or even elegant wind turbine or cell tower can be out of place on many, if not most, New England ridgelines. There are more interesting sculptural versions of cell towers, but even they must endure the second assessment of location and placement, an assessment of proper fit. As so many community voices have in their own way attempted to say, this single and then soon to be several cell towers is no small or trivial matter. On the contrary, the decision to accept a cell tower is indeed a big deal. We need to be certain that such an intrusion at substantial and likely psychic cost is worth it relative to achieved communication, convenience, and possibly safety. While we as a community seem to have concentrated on cell tower appearance, why is any subject out of bounds when viewing the impacts of cell towers, let alone the now known health impacts? We now know much more about electric and radio frequency and their health impacts on many or all of us. We simply must use caution and care relative to this potentially intrusive Spruce Corner cell tower proposal. Walter Kudnahowski. It's the last letter that I forgot. And we'll go in the file with the other ones. So you guys brought up timelines. And do you feel like the shot clock's going to run out in another 8 or 9 days? Because given that you spent close to 3 months answering one question, it seems a little unreasonable.
The shot clock is the law reads began on June 12th, so we're on the 139th day of that period. The reason it took so long was because you required the NEPA filings to be complete before you asked for an approval. That's not typical of all towns. A lot of towns just require that we meet our NEPA approvals where you wanted to see that approval prior to approving us. So we're willing to work with the town to answer your question. We're not looking to hold you to 11 days from now. However, we would like to come to some agreement on a date certain in the near future to conclude this. I'm sure you're tired of hearing about cell towers just as much as we are driving here and discussing.
Oh, you're not tired. You do this for a living.
Oh, we're tired. You're tired us out.
It's a long drive.
Well, I guess there's that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that answers, I guess, that question as well as you can. I think the planning board feels like we need a few more weeks. Does the board feel like the issue of how far the building is from the tower is sufficiently pressed and answered at this point?
Just to be
Historic
clear,
property.
you're referring to the last
The last historic property, the one that we reviewed.
ASF-239.
Right.
Come again on that?
The last
The old street house.
property that was requested to be looked at, of which that addendum, I believe, is what Lauren's reading.
So I guess I would just say, I don't know whether the Historic Commission received one of these, since their letter specifically addressed it. I still have concerns about where exact coordinates are and how that's figured out and issues of that nature, but they went ahead and included the house, Williams House, and still said that the visual impact would not prevent a cell tower from going in there. I do think that it that asking for it to be mitigated in certain ways would follow, since it was visible from there.
Yeah, and I think Bruce said that given all the different maps, there was a suggestion that we really needed to prove it, it would have to be surveyed, because you've got all these map opinions. So realistically, as the planning board, this is exactly the reason we're talking about height and camouflage anyways, which is exactly what they would require if they would ask us to do what we're doing anyways if it was within the half mile. So I can't see doing a survey to prove whether it's inside of the half mile or outside of the half mile. So, do we feel like the NEPA study is complete at this point?
I feel that it's complete, but I think the board needs to be satisfied as a whole.
It seems like all pieces have come. I feel.
I don't know of any instance.
Okay.
Do you guys, the applicant, have anything further to add at this time?
The only thing I have to add is, we've been to a lot of meetings and we discussed various heights. We were initially in front of you with a 150-foot monopole. We talked about going higher than that. We talked about going lower than that, and extending the tower and camouflage. You know our opinion on camouflage. You have a different opinion, and that's fine. We're willing to camouflage it if that's what you prefer. At the last meeting, the consultant mentioned that 120 feet he felt was tall enough. Our height was 130 feet to get the 3 carriers on, and we asked for a compromise from the board of 125 feet if you feel that that's fair. And we would make the tower extendable should it need to go higher in the future. There was also some mention about sound from the generator, and we will meet and comply with all Massachusetts noise standards and maximum decibel levels at the property lines, which is absolutely no problem at all because we're talking about 1,500 feet, and no one's going to hear this generator. It's so far away from the general public and homes, it's not going to be an issue, but we will comply with all standards with regard to that. And thank you very much for your patience and listening to us and waiting for all the documents that have come in. And
I think you said the generator was going to be inside a building.
it's going to be inside the compound. So in some cases, the equipment, there is no building. If you remember, some of the major carriers like AT&T and Verizon have shelters that are, could be like 12 by 24.
Well,
Typically, they put
cabinets,
theirs.
if you want to call them that.
Well, those are I would call buildings. But then there's other equipment shelters like T-Mobile and Sprint, where it's typically a cabinet the size of a refrigerator. You couldn't put a generator inside that. So, if those cabinets.
Excuse me for being paranoid, but in this particular neighborhood, I've watched sound complaints go on for years until somebody can catch the right decibels to bust the guy and make him put a muffler on or something.
Well, there'll be a silencer muffler on.
So there probably will be a condition of having the generator in a cabinet with a muffler, not just.
It'll be in a cabinet. Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be outside a cabinet.
And we also talked about a 10% bond at one point. You offered 5, I said 10.
10%.
Of cost of construction.
I think we mentioned at the first meeting, I think it was $10,000, and you asked for $20,000. Does that sound accurate?
I'm a construction estimator, and demolition usually is somewhere between 5 and 10% of construction, so I'm asking for 10%. That way the town's covered.
Yeah.
It's probably somewhere around 20.
We could comply with that.
All right. Yes,
Could you explain what the bond means to the public?
sure. The bond is if they all get hit by a truck and the company folds up and the tower's sitting there, the town has access to enough money to dismantle the tower at their expense. They will put in, as long as the tower is there, there'll be a bond that grows along with inflation to take the tower down in case they go belly up and the tower is just sitting there. There is not a bond on the current rusty old crappy tower that's sitting up there, and that's probably still there, for instance. So, okay. Yes, it's probably time for people to comment. That's Jude.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it's possible that they put up the balloon again, so we can see it without the leaves. There's no leaves now, and I didn't see it last time. I didn't notice it at all. And I lived there. Maybe I wasn't looking for it, but now that it's really bare, I think it's worth us seeing how it, what it's going
Our
to.
bylaw doesn't require 2 balloon flyings. I guess that's a question to the applicant. If you want to fly another balloon.
Well, but they did that in the beginning.
They took down the weather and put it back up.
I thought it was so that we could observe.
No. The balloon came down because of a weather malfunction, and then they put it back up to complete the 2 weeks of observation.
Right, but that was in summertime, when there are leaves on the trees. There's no leaves on the trees now. Why can't we just do it again, so we can, you're talking about a 2-week extension here.
I just don't think they
now.
can have anything that they can do about that unless they want to volunteer. It would be great if we could fly balloons summer and winter. As a practical matter, that extends hearings into 7 or 8 months. And that's,
What was the height of the balloon when they flew it?
they threw it 150,
So now you're talking about a
shorter,
30-foot or
20 to
25-foot
30 foot.
shorter thing, so I don't see the balloon probably just disappear.
Yeah,
You and me. Yes, ma'am.
and,
Excuse me, I need you to state your name, please, for the record. Thank you.
Susan Kaminsky,
Thank you.
Spruce Corner. Yeah, I was just responding to what you said to her, which was that as a practical matter, and I don't understand why.
The FCC is now requiring us to try to make decisions unless we have good excuses in 5 months. That means that it will frequently be impossible to fly balloons twice a year for a hearing even wanted to.
So it's against regulations. It's specifically against regulations to do it.
No, it's not against regulations. It's kind of like nature doesn't really line up with people with human schedules. Or, yes.
If we made a change to bylaw that said balloon tests had to be done in the winter, like designate certain months, and in the future developers knew ahead of time, could they be asked to plan for that in the future? No, it can't happen this time.
Yeah, probably something like that, yeah. We'd have to require it prior to the application in some way. And I think we better ask a little advice before we take that step, but it sounds possible.
Just for future reference, keep in mind the shot clock, that's where you might get in trouble with that.
Well, what I'm saying is if you have it in your bylaw so that when people are looking into the bylaw and what they have to meet, if they know ahead of time, I need to plan for this to happen when the leaves are off, then the shot clock wouldn't start until they are applying. I just didn't know whether, if the information's out their head that the business has to then plan accordingly to what the bylaw is asking.
So Kevin, if you come back to the planning board again for another tower, which you probably won't ever want to deal with us again, we might have a new bylaw in place that would say we got to fly the balloon in November.
We're almost certainly going to require a NEPA study prior to application in the future, for instance. It might be harder to work a double balloon test prior to application, but I didn't really like having to wait 2 or 3 months for maybe information that we need in the middle of a hearing. I'm sure you didn't either. I think it would have been better for you. I understand why you didn't, but in this particular situation, it might work better if you had that all done when you got here from our point of view. Yes, you had a question.
Ann Maddox, Plainfield Road. So I just wanted to see if you, after the last hearing, it was my understanding, well, the hearing was continued today to hear from the Ashfield Historical Commission and to also wait to hear back from Mass Historical regarding sign off on their study and comment from our local board. I also raised some concerns about properties that were omitted from their study, and I submitted a letter both to Mass Historical and to the Ashfield Historical Commission, which the board was CC'd on, that included a map of properties that were omitted. So I was wondering if you could comment on that tonight, officially, where that's at, what's being taken into consideration given what was omitted from their study.
Yeah, the study, there's the consultants. Well, first, the Historic Commission did find an error in the study. And then the consultants and them went back and forth a little bit about what was the nature of the error. And the error has now been corrected. The property is still probably seen as outside of the half mile, just barely.
Which property? I'm sorry. can you clarify?
Streeter property.
The William House. The Williams.
And what's come up to us is that there's over half mile distance, there can be a 7, 10, 15, or 40-some foot difference between one computer mapping program and another. And that seems to have been the nature of the mistake. We are treating, the planning board, I believe, is treating the property as though it's effective. We don't have a half-mile radius. And it's one of the reasons that we're proceeding to require camouflage and talking about height. And we just got a couple photo simulations sent to us by Kevin, thank you, about what it would look like from the direction of what the Ashfield Historic Commission believes is maybe the most historic house in the neighborhood. So it probably doesn't really matter whether it's 7 feet inside of the half mile or 7 feet outside of the half mile. Planning board is still acting on it as though we have a recommendation for abatement. This consultant didn't think it was going to have a serious effect on the property with or without the chemical. Did I get that right, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Spruce Corner Road. If there is different opinions on the distance and there's obviously was a discrepancy, could we suggest to have it surveyed to make everyone happy?
You can. We were just talking about whether anybody was going to be any happier if it's surveyed or not, though. I'm not convinced that it's going to create any joy at all. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jenny Laguna, Spruce Corner. Homeowner, we do want a survey. It's potentially affecting the historical status, we do want a survey.
Can you just repeat your name again, please? Sorry.
Jenny Laguna, WILDERMUCH.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it's not going to make any difference to the federal historians on what their recommendations are for the cell tower. And if you want to survey it, you have a right. I don't think the town or the applicant is required to survey it. We could decide if we felt the pressing need to survey it. We're treating it as though it is in, the board here is treating it as though it is inside of the half mile anyways. So you could prove it's inside of a half mile, it isn't going to change our behavior at all. Yes?
Could you elaborate a little bit?
Sorry, your name, please?
Jody Hawson.
Thank you.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the language of your discussion with either John Patton at the Mass Historic Commission or Steve Lawson at the...
I think the best thing would be to read the documents. They've all been arriving as public documents in the very near future. I don't feel qualified to do a dissertation on it. I followed it and I know what it means, but I'm not at the point where I can explain it sufficiently to you, Debbie. I think if you, do you want to borrow the addenda from us?
Well, I'm just curious because it sounds as though in their reading of it, they have decided that it would not qualify, and I'm just, that's a serious conclusion, and I think there are people in the room who are concerned about that, and I think want to try to, understand on what grounds they would came to that conclusion.
Should we read one of the paragraphs that explains house finding?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You could do that, that'd be great.
While the AHC letter states that the current owners of the House Williams house saw a balloon during one of the several tests conducted for the project, the PAL team did not identify any views during balloon float on September 5th, 2014. It is unlikely that the conditions at the time of PAL's survey, which were noted as being sunny and warm with only slight breeze, materially affected the validity of the balloon test. If, however, there will be any view of the project from the House Williams house, it will be the uppermost portion of the tower at a distance of 1/2 mile. A view of that nature, looking outward from the house rather than toward the historic house and its agricultural setting, will not impact the qualities of significance that make the property potentially eligible for listing in the National Register. PAL therefore recommends that the proposed project will have no effect on the House Williams house or any other inventoried resources within the area.
So by saying it will have no effect on the house means therefore that Pete and Jenny could at some future date apply to be in the National Register. If that is their finding, it is the case that they can apply to be in the National Register. Even with that.
That's a statement from you to us as a
No, it's a question. Does that mean?
You know more about this than me.
I just know that word effect will have no effect. That's the powerful legal term. Vis-a-vis their, I guess, I don't know, could you perhaps respond to them by saying, are you saying in effect that they can in the future apply to be on the National Register because you have deemed that this will not have a visual impact on the property?
Well, the applicant is paying them. On the other hand, they're fulfilling a public function. And I would think the Historic Commission would actually be the ones, not the planning board, asking that question. What do you think? Should the Historic Commission send them a letter asking that question?
If you read the report, it's basically saying the question that she's asking. It'll have no effect on the historic significance of the house, and they will be able to file it at some point in the future if they choose to be on National Register. That's what a no effect finding is. It has no effect on the historic properties of that house, and they will be able to file if they choose to in the future. It's a detailed report. It was sent to the Historic Commission.
Well, they haven't met since you sent that, so they don't know. Yes?
Ann Maddox, but that report was paid for by the applicant Industrial Wireless on their behalf. Has Mass Historical weighed in on this discrepancy, the state agencies? What do they say about these discrepancies?
Well, I spoke, Jody Hall.
Yes, Jody, could you take that, because I haven't talked to them.
Okay, I spoke with Jim Patton, and your question is what did they have written a letter basically approving this project. I'm not sure anybody here has gotten it. They reviewed everything that was submitted. They did not see these 4 additional properties which you brought up in your letter. And so I went around the block with them, with John a few times. It's John Patton. And he's the project leader for them. And he basically, what's your question again?
My question is, so what did they say? Like, these properties were left out, the consultant said, oh, well, so what? They were left out, but there's no impact anyways. What does Mass Historical have to say about that?
Well, the only really significant structure in any of those, the school is off limits because there's the tower that's there is visible from that schoolhouse. So there's already a tower there. Another tower is just another tower. It means the schoolhouse cannot be counted as a possibility for the National Register. And that's the grounds on which a tower cannot be built, if a building is qualified for the National Register. So even though you identify 4 additional properties, 2 of them are categorically not qualified for the National Register. The schoolhouse is, but it's compromised. The 4th property, the one owned by Pete and Jenny, is eligible for the National Register. So John was, I at that point had not driven out to their house and talked to Pete and Jenny and found out that they saw the balloon. He was not hopeful that it would qualify, and so
Because of the tower? Not hopeful that it would qualify.
I guess qualifying for the National Register is such a big deal. You have to have a house that is very pure back at the period in which it was built. And their house is that, and they have been making some repairs that are very faithful to the period in which it was built. But this business of the view and the tower and of how much of the front is, they have some legal ways of talking about the tower and if maybe that hill weren't there, if the house were squat in the middle of, something that is the entire tower, that would maybe put that tower off limits. But the fact is there is a ridge or a small hill, and it is true that a portion, the topmost portion, would be visible from their house, and that's a call they can make. I'm not sure how, that it's legally dispensable.
Thank you.
It's murky.
Yes, Judy.
Our road consultant, Bruce, who was not able to be here tonight, used some different software to look at the radius, and he was concerned originally and then did some mock-up with different software, and he found that the home was 17 feet outside the half-mile radius. And he felt, from his position of expertise, by limiting the tower height and adding the camouflage, that the impact would be reduced.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Well, the consult, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but just the consultant's map that they provided in their NEPA study with the radius that they drew does have the house inside the radius, inside the half-mile radius. That's why I brought it to everyone's attention, because I used their map.
Yeah.
That's not the consultant she was talking about.
I understand but Bruce did his own mapping and said it was outside, but I just wanted to make clear that this applicant and their consultant drew a line, and the property was within the half-mile radius.
They also revised the map on page 3 of the agenda.
That map was revised.
They revised the map, and now the house is outside of the radius? Is that what the revised map shows? That's an interesting coincidence.
So because of your letter, PAL did go ahead and say, if we were to treat it as if it was in the radius, we would still find there's no effect, which is the paragraph that I wrote. So that was a response to your questions. So they still claim it's not, but they say they look at it as if it was, and they still find no effect.
Thank you.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank you for the amount of work that you put in on this. Impressive. I'm glad that you're here to do it. In terms of the 7 or 17 feet, my question to anybody is how aggressive a treatment would you put yourself through for a disease with no symptoms? It's a moot point, it seems, since you're mitigating something that doesn't really need it anyway. The other thing is that I've been sitting here and trying to really come up with a definition, or at least a difference between due diligence and procrastination. At some point, you got to do something. I lived through a large part of the 35 years that it took Ashfield to build a wastewater treatment plant. And you guys are moving at the speed of light compared to that. I'm suggesting that the only way this battle is ever going to end is for a decision to be made. And I am encouraging you to make it sooner rather than later.
Decision. Wait to be recognized.
That's it.
Okay.
Can I respond to the shot clock?
I was going to say something.
Okay.
Bill, we've spent most of the last 5 months waiting for information.
That makes it even faster.
And
But you cannot exceed the speed of light.
this is
so
our
you're
4th
limited.
meeting, which is out there.
Yeah.
But I also know that I want to have a defensible decision. And if there's very many stones that haven't been turned or heard, it raises the chance of not having a defensible decision significantly. And I really have the impression that we're down to very small rocks at this point. But thank you for your advice. Ken, did you want to say something?
Can I add to that?
Yes, Laura, sorry.
I think something that I'm considering also is, so the shot clock is 150 for the first cell tower, but it's a little unclear how much it gets to be less for the next cell towers. So just making sure that there is every rock turned over this time, all issues covered, seems exceptionally important.
Well, if it's the same, if it's a separate tower,
So it's just co-location, that would be less.
it's the same shot clock. If it's co-location, it's a shorter tower.
Ken?
I'm just having trouble hearing you.
Oh,
Hearing us or hearing,
Everyone.
hearing everyone?
Ryan, are you recording? I don't think that was noted, but wasn't that?
No, apparently,
no, we should note that Brian started recording after our clerk asked if anyone was recording. Yes. So you may be on film. Any other questions? Comments? Yes, Ann.
Thank you. I too want to thank the board for all your time. I know you've answered all of my questions and spent a lot of time in conversation with me, and I do really appreciate that. Since this may be our last hearing tonight, I just want to reiterate that this, as you just noted, is probably going to be the first of several towers that are going to come into our community, and the precedent that this one sets is very, very high. And I still believe that we have currently a bylaw that sets a height of 80 feet for a cell tower. And I understand your reasonings for why you're considering raising the height of that tower. I don't agree with that, and I would ask you to really take into consideration the fact that the tree line is about 70 feet high. And even with an additional 30 feet to give, the 10-foot spacing between the three carriers, that would set the tower around 100 feet, which is still lower than 120, 130, 125, which is being thrown around. So I would ask that you just continue to consider that as the context for this. This tower, I know that, the consideration is that one taller tower might help create less towers across town. But any tower anywhere is going to have a significant visual impact on our community, no matter what. I mean, people say to me, oh, don't worry, you won't even see it after a few weeks. Well, I am going to see it after a few weeks, and I'm going to see it for the rest of the time that I live in Spruce Corner. And so want all of my neighbors, and that doesn't mean that they all are opposed to this, but it is going to have an impact on our neighborhood and our community, and let's have the records state that. I mean, I know that this consultant is saying there's going to be no visual impact relative to the historic significance of the properties there, but let the record show that this will have an impact on our community. It's going to have a significant visual impact on our neighborhood at a minimum, and let's not just roll over and play dead and accept that, that's not going to be the case. So, thank you.
No, the record has to show that there's a visual impact. I'm sure it's going to be part of our findings. Yes, Doug?
Doug Mollison, Holly Road. I got a question and I got a comment. Question first. You were talking a little while ago about having so many weeks or whatever to deliberate on this. I would like some kind of a date, and I think everybody here would. Set a timeline. Is it going to be 4 weeks? Is it going to be 6 weeks? Is it going to be January 1st? I think we deserve a timeline. That's the question. The comment is, Mike, you've been in the farming business in this town. You never will turn over all of the stones. Our land is full of stones and pebbles. So there's always going to be questions on these things. So if we miss one this time, catch it the next time.
All right, thanks, Doug. But this isn't farming.
But I agree with you.
He is a farmer.
Yes, Ken?
Did you think you could respond to his first question?
Well, I think the applicants want a deadline, and I don't have the power to set one. We could negotiate a deadline with the applicants. The entire board could vote on a deadline, and we might. I tend to think better late than wrong on these kind of things, and because it's not farming. And on the other hand, I would say that my personal opinion is if this would go to Christmas, that would be really unreasonable and unfair to the applicant. And if we were to try to crank this out in the next 3 days, that would be unfair to the town and probably to the applicant as well. So it's probably somewhere in between. I've been through a lot of these hearings, and we are now at the point where people just really don't have many more new facts to add, and that means the planning board needs to make their decisions and vote. We have one board member who's going to New Zealand in a couple of days and going to be gone for a month. And our biggest concern is deciding whether he's going to vote before he leaves and leave us to write the decision or what or how we're going to handle that. And that hinges a little bit on whether there's any new information showing up tonight. And it's one of the things we're all 4 or 5 of us are thinking about at the moment. Sharon.
Sharon Wadsworth Road. I have a couple of questions just to bring me are we at this juncture relative to the carrier? Have there been some contracts with the three carriers or at minimum letters of intent? That's the first question. And the second is, can you comment on what your perspective is going to be on camouflage if in fact the tower is approved? What will it look like? What have you explored? What are you considering? And will that be a condition of the final approval?
We're going to, I cannot answer the first one because that's an answer to the applicant, or a question to the applicant. We have not, the board has not seen any actual contracts, nor do our bylaws require them. The second question is we're getting, we're going to do an or equal specification to the environmental integration product that's made in Orange, Mass.
Which would consist of?
Which you missed the hearing where you came in and did a
So for those who missed,
Do you want to read this?
You want to look at his folder, it's kind of what we're going for, is that.
just in general, is the concept still a monopole-like structure? Yes.
The structure would be, yes.
For this location.
For this location.
We can ask the applicant to respond to the first question.
Yes, that's right. Do you have any,
It's the same response that we gave the last meeting and the meeting prior to that. Not at this time, but once we get our approvals and we get construction, it's typically when the carrier will sign up.
Do you even have a letter of intent at this juncture that shows any level of interest in the tower?
We do not.
Lauren, you can go, and then the man in the back.
And on the Holly Tower, is it still two?
Yes.
Two are installed,
Verizon is installed and AT&T is coming up right behind it.
and no one else
Not
has.
this time.
There was a question in the back.
Charles Ross.
Charles.
I just need, want to ask a point of clarity to the board. Will any decision for approval by the planning board specifically include or exclude or remain ambivalent about potential future maintenance or construction or infrastructure that might occur outside of the immediate property where the cell tower is constructed?
I don't think we have jurisdiction outside of where the application is shown.
So that would have to come before the board as a separate issue?
The plan shows a piece of property in the middle of a larger lot that they're actually working on. And that's all we're looking at is what's happening on that piece of property on the plan right now. If that's what you mean.
Yes.
I mean, what's Lenny going to do with the rest of this property?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about potentially if there needs to be new construction of roads or modification of roads or any sort of...
They're going to extend the existing access road
on the property.
on the property. But they're not building a new road per se, or a new road or anything like that. Is anyone else?
I can say the construction plans are here too if you want to.
Hey, I just, for the record, your last name is Ross. Ross, okay, thank you.
Does anybody have anything else to add? Well, guys, what do you think? You want to close the hearing? Nobody has anything to say?
I vote to close the hearing. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just curious, you talked about the future and what your plans are with regard to maybe putting a decision together. Are you going to be voting tonight on this application, or are you putting that off to another date?
We're going to try to vote tonight. We're going to discuss the idea and move towards it. I think it's probably the most accurate thing to say. I can't say for certainty that we'll arrive at a consensus this evening.
Okay.
I think it's close.
Yeah, we're probably close. So, Yes, Helene?
If you don't decide tonight, are you going to decide at another meeting or another hearing? How will we?
Yes, the decision will be made in a public meeting. And if we don't decide tonight, it'll probably be next Wednesday.
So that's at a
That's
regular
the date.
planning
That's our
board
regular,
hearing.
regular meeting date.
Okay. And I just wanted to say in front of all of you that a lot of people live in this town because it is pristine and free of toxins and pollutants. And I know that a lot of people feel that way. And after we've built a house here and raised our children here, it's pretty shocking to have something like this be voted on by our town. I know you haven't made a decision yet, but it's not what I thought would happen when I moved to this beautiful town, and it's not what I want here.
Yes, Kevin?
Sorry, just one more question. Did you say you're going to have a board member missing after tonight, or?
Yeah, if we don't vote tonight, Ken here is going to New Zealand to babysit his grandchildren for a month. Like how I like. And so if we don't vote tonight, it's going to be a 4-person vote. Or wait a month till he gets back.
That would be one reason why we would prefer to have a vote tonight, just to have all the members.
Amen. Yes.
Peter, Spruce Corner. Is there any consideration of property values and the negative effect of having the cell phone tower on property values? Does that have any bearing on the decision? As I imagine, I would not have wanted to buy this house if I knew it was this close to a cell phone tower.
No. We have no property value criteria, and that's deliberate. A lot of zoning laws used to have property value criteria. They were thrown out by various courts over the latter half of the 20th century because they were being used as Jim Crow laws to keep the blacks from moving in town. There are instances where rich towns get so much property value protection that the servants couldn't afford to live there. Today we regulate the things that create property value, not property value itself. We regulate neighborhood character, mature botanical assets, look through our criteria to see all the things we're regulating. If you think about it, all those things affect property value. They don't protect, but they more preserve property value. Most attorneys in land use will tell you, don't put property value in your bylaws. It's a poison pill legally if you get into court. If we had it and we were enforcing it and we went into court, the opposing attorney would immediately start questioning the racial intentions of everybody on the board. I'm not putting myself in that position, so no, we don't do property values. Thank you. Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, the first time I came to one of these meetings, I said that we have cell service, and you contended that was anecdotal. It is not anecdotal. I actually have devices that show that I received texts today, and I made phone calls, and I have my Wi-Fi device that shows how many gigabytes I've used in the last 10 days. Having said that,
I was quoting a legal decision on exactly that kind of comment, which I told you.
I'm
at
sorry,
the
what?
time. I was quoting a legal decision when I used the word anecdotal.
Okay,
and
but
I
I'm
believe
just-
I explained that at the time.
Yeah,
That
well,
a judge called that kind
the
of
fact is that
testimony
there is a signal in Spruce Corner already.
Thank you.
Fairly strong. The other thing I want to bring up, which is divergent to anything anybody cares about, but I think most of us here in Spruce Corner care very much about, is the fact that the speed limit on that road is exceeded by double, almost all the time, with impunity. People go 50, 60 miles an hour. It's a very narrow road. Just 2 days ago, I was passed on a WL line for going the speed limit. This happens all the time. Now, you have people, you had text, and you had telephone. We had a car crash into the telephone pole in the house next to us because people just don't pay attention to the safety of the roads. at all. Everybody here knows that. Everybody who lives on Spruce Corner. So, you know, I'm just throwing that out there as another issue. I'm sure none of you really care about that, but we who live there do.
You're very deeply about it.
Plus, it's not well maintained in the winter
It's not maintained.
at all.
Just point of fact, I responded to that accident, and part of the problem there was the person who was driving the car could not get cell service to call for help.
That's a double-edged sword of cell phones nowadays.
Well,
Yeah.
you mentioned it.
That person,
Yes, Ken?
just to clarify, that person walked within their house and was able to use the cell phone.
Fortunately, he was able to walk.
I am going to refrain from putting my opinion into that mix.
I think we're ready for, I know that,
Are you making a motion?
yeah, Judy had started a motion on closing the public hearing.
Okay, are you seconding it?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. The hearing is closed. And we're going to continue having our meeting.
Does someone have to sign in? Anybody that came in late that didn't sign in, could they sign in?
So, discussion. Bond seems clear.
I'd like to,
All right. 5-minute break, everyone. I'm in favor of that.
5-minute break.
Some of the photos he sent you probably very realistic.
No, but,
No, we haven't. Yes, we're having our meeting. Yep. And starting off with the first.
Yeah.
that's what I do at recess when it's time to go.
We are going to continue
Just
our...
note that, we're reconvening as a board.
We're meeting, and my back is to you, so we can converse item by item on our vote.
So if you want a conversation, go outside and listen, stay in here. So first condition. Okay, we're proposing is draw. Well, we close the hearing.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Is everybody comfortable making a decision?
Tonight, or
I think we need to go through that criteria before you
Want to do
can
that
honestly
before
answer
that?
that.
All right, then let's do that.
Okay. Section 6F2A-1, facility will or will not design to accommodate the maximum number of users technologically practical.
Well,
If this is where we put in the extendability.
if it can, they said they would go to so if we want that. And to me, there's also the idea of technological practical in terms of how many companies are interested in it. But if we do extendable, then yes.
Right.
Okay, well then, as long as we know that that's
We expect up to 3 users. We probably know this. And in case they need more than 3 users, we want to require that it's extended. I think that's probably where we're going to be there. And this is where, on your vote sheet, you want to put in a condition. Extendable in case more than 3 users are wanting to rent the place. And we don't all have to rate the same thing. Any further questions?
I would just say that I am not sure that, so in other words, I may want it to not do that, to not
be extended.
Not
be extendable, but if I circle will not, that doesn't mean that I can vote for it.
I put will not, because the maximum number of users would be 5, and they're doing 3.
But if it's extendable, I would be able to do 5.
That's the
Right.
second part of my reason.
Yeah, yeah, you're allowed to vote for the whole thing and have, you can vote whatever you want each one of these things, That's the beauty of democracy, I think.
So that it being extendable in what situation?
If we put it in at 120, we know that at around 80 or 90, their coverage craps out from the maps. So if they can only get 3 people that are willing to pay for the coverage that's available and a 4th person comes along and wants to rent it, then the developers will have to extend the tower up to accommodate those future people. I might say it seems incredibly unlikely that a single carrier is going to want to pay to extend the tower and camouflage so that it would be the 4th person on the block. But it doesn't have to be likely or unlikely for us to vote on it. It does have some cost.
Well, I asked kind of because it brings in the whole issue of the camouflage and how that's going to be described in the conditions which that has to get.
Can I ask the applicant a question?
Yeah, you can ask anybody in the audience a question.
So we were talking about how, 80 certainly shows much less coverage than the 120. But I was curious whether 80 allows for communication with the current towers in Goshen and Cummington.
Say that again? Say that question again? Sorry.
So understanding whether at 80 feet, it allows for the communication with the towers in Cummington and Goshen or whatever is hoped for in terms of having that cohesion.
The answer is no, because the trees up there are anywhere between 65, 75, and 80 feet. You need to be at least 20 feet above the tree canopy for it to be effective.
Well, so I'm just, like, if you look at a map, is
You
there
mean
a way to tell?
overlapping their coverage?
Yeah, well,
Not
We're connected.
well,
Seamless coverage between the two.
whatever the goals are in terms of why it's good to have towers at certain locations
Yeah.
Seamless.
to each other.
At
So,
80 feet would not work. It would not be seamless.
so can you see that on this map?
On the map you have in front now.
No, but we do have a map showing the overlaps. A few of them.
Well, we have a map that shows what coverage would be with 150 and the current altogether, but it's not, I just am still not understanding the concept of what it takes to get the towers to work together, cooperate,
20 feet above the tree line.
That's right. At a minimum.
Somewhere around 100 feet, yeah.
But it seems like there also is something about the tower locations. Like if you had flat surface,
Oh, yeah.
it would be
Yeah, all
10
elevations,
lines or
all
whatever,
that stuff
so
does.
I'm trying to understand that technically better.
Yeah, that all affects it, but in this case, you would need to be 20 feet above the tree line, at least for the lowest area that connects to the tower elevation.
To overlap, you mean, not to connect.
Well, to have seamless coverage.
Yeah. Connected makes it sound like
Right.
towers are talking to each other. It would
But
probably
something
have to be 170 feet for that, but that's not the goal. Okay. I get fussy about language sometimes.
Well, it's been described several ways, and because that
It's true.
talking to each other was the way it was described at one point, so I'm just trying to figure out what, so now we're going to seamless coverage, which is the goal towards not dropping calls as well, correct?
Sure.
If we put the extendable phrase in this, then the applicant would not need to come back for a special permit for
Yeah, that was
extension.
my next question, whether there would be need another permit.
As long as we're very specific about the extension being Town Road and all that.
The purpose of putting in the extension is so that it goes back to the same reason for the variance to begin with, or the waiver to begin with, and that is to get more coverage. Am I correct on that?
Number in town, number of facilities.
Things keep the number of the facilities down.
Even if you are extending to bring in another carrier, that's co-location.
Yes, our bylaws really kind of require that if a fourth carrier wants to move into the neighborhood, unless we change our bylaws, they have to go to that tower and then pay to extend it. That's kind of the way this is written, here that I can tell. And I don't think that we have anything for a special permit for each and every vendor that comes to the tower. We just have a special permit for the tower.
Do you think that was in our discussion, previous meetings prior to this application? What I said about how to address that in the current telecommunications facilities bylaw. We had discussion about basically when Chris Gray came with his proposal, his idea about the wireless antennas. That discussion came up. So if you put an antenna up on a steeple, would you have to come back if you want to put another one up and another one up, would you have to come back each time for a special permit? So I think it's a similar scenario here. If they want to extend, what does that mean in terms of permitting? As the law is currently written.
I don't see any it's a good point.
Because that's an important aspect, I think, to this, not to try to put a monkey wrench
Go right ahead.
in project development, and bringing more business in and more coverage in, but I think this is something that I think carefully about, because if there is an opportunity for the tower to be extended, does this planning board have any kind of say in how it gets permitted? Would you need a special permit, or would you just need a builder's permit? I think that's an important thing that we have to consider.
I think within the answer, we can put permission.
It's up to us, I think.
Well, These, I think, though, do not.
We could put conditions for the extension right here in the paragraph.
That's part of what I mean. That the extension would have to follow the camouflage conditions.
The other,
And that's, I'm just saying, that's, it needs to be spelled out somewhere. If we're going to allow for extendability,
Generally in Massachusetts, if you have a special permit and you're going, and it gives you permission to do something of a certain size, and you want to do something bigger, then you need to go back for another special permit unless the bylaws specifically say something different.
okay, but our bylaws don't really say.
However, we are tonight, by requiring an extension, giving them permission to extend under certain conditions. And those conditions should be the ones that we're setting. I don't think we should. I think we should leave them the option of coming back for a special permit if they want to extend it a different amount, or change the camouflage, or change our conditions. The technology changes, but I'm sure it's up to us if we want to require them to come back for another special permit for extension, or we just want to say you can extend this according to the same conditions that the original one was built with.
in which case then we'd have to say it cannot go higher than this amount, and can only have
Unless you have
5
more than
cars.
3 users. Right. So that's up to us.
So,
It's possible to give a special permit for a big box store and then only have to build 2/3 of it, and then they still have a special permit. There's a housing development in Amherst that's still running around with a special permit from a long time ago, because it was not limited by the 2 years it was given for good.
Special
We
dispensation.
did this for good, not limited by the 2 years. So that's something we have to decide on.
Right.
Just a
And let's
question.
continue along these things, because they don't need us to be able to decide on that.
Well, just a question to the applicant here. This is dated the 27th, so I'm making the assumption that it was considering
Tell them what it is.
this amendment. I'm sorry, I should
It's
have.
the addendum to
The addendum, that it would have, in other words, they're making the comment in what Lauren had read last paragraph, considering it to be a 150-foot
That's right.
tower. Okay. I just wanted to be sure of that, because I didn't want to talk about extending it and, and then have this come back different, because then I do think then it starts to put another impact on the public, which I think would need to be addressed. Okay.
Are you ready to move on to B?
Yes. I think that the facility will exceed 80 feet. Some comment there, so there needs to be something about section L. And will not have exterior lighting.
No. Well, it's
Will
prohibited,
exceed
so it's a will.
it will meet the requirements.
Will meet the requirements, yes. Exactly.
Okay.
Okay,
See?
I think that's pretty straightforward. Right?
Right.
Well,
Yes.
Do we want to add something about camo there?
it's down for,
It's down for
Mhm.
Uh,
It's H.
7,
We're gonna get to it on H.
Oh,
Let's do it now.
Right.
Facility will not be located within 100 feet of the crest of the ridge line or 500 feet from the summit of a hill.
No, that's kind of addresses.
And be located in such a way as to minimize the visual impact of the facility when viewed off-site.
Your property lines, you've got plenty of homes for property.
We haven't gotten there, but I'm just saying that.
Oh, you're on this side, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it is because you can make, depending on how you feel about this, you can say all kinds of things. You can say that none of the major roads are pointing at it for most of their travel. You can say how far it is from the property line or how far it is from roads. You can look at a map of the neighborhood and see that this is, and compare it to other areas in the neighborhood. You're going to certainly arrive at your own decision here. And we might want some time to copy these over at the end.
So what was, so then, let's see, the second sentence was a will, correct?
In that consideration, if we looked at the property and thought about if there was any other location, basically that's the idea of where it's exactly located. So we think that if it was higher up, it would be more visible.
up the hill,
Yeah.
and further away from the houses, is that what you're...
No, I mean, it's just been discussion, so just in trying to think about, this is purely about the actual location spot, right? So in some ways, we had other considerations in terms of not moving it, like wetlands and cutting and, closer would be more likely to be more visible.
Right.
If they put it down right next to the road,
That would be more.
that would be more visible.
And I put the tower would be camouflage to soften the visual impact.
Yeah, you added camera.
I did that.
Well, the POW seems to reference the deciduous trees,
This is about location.
not the growth. The trees.
Be located in such a way as to minimize about the location of the tower. I myself am going to say that it's really as far as you can get from homes in the neighborhood, anywhere you go. And therefore, and also the fact that the roads run parallel to it rather than pointing at it generally in the neighborhood. Those are the reasons why I would decide that it's a good site. I think the engineers went through and looked at those kind of things because they know when they run into trouble. They could have stuck it down here, be closer to the road. If you stuck it over there, you'd see it from more 116. Stick it down here, you'd see it more from Watson. They have wetlands and a ridge line up behind them. They don't want to go closer to that.
How access to is somewhat there already, so I'm sure that has a lot to do with it.
There are, I'm sure, a lot of reasons you could feel that way. You want to go on to E? 25% of the vertical distance, I mean, that's just, I'm going to rate C plan on that one.
So, I'm confused as to what the will and the will not actually means here.
Well, if it's,
It's following the
it
bylaw,
will
it will
not,
not.
it will not.
For that one, will not means it's following the bylaw.
And just for the record, referring to the plan should list the title and the sheet number of the plan.
That's the design.
No, it's just,
Are you talking, Michael, are you talking about this?
Yeah, it works.
Or the one that's not with trees?
that one is
Pick your own plan, maybe.
What page?
Section 3, it's called sheet number 2.
Which section are you covering?
Section 3.
Why chain link fence? Did you put the fence up last?
Yeah.
Talking about Megan's law, right?
Excuse me?
Know about Megan's law, right? Any hole in the ground that's deeper than it is wide, 4 feet deep in Massachusetts needs to be covered or fenced at night and every time. We're starting to put fences up earlier in our project for that rather than at the end in many cases.
Is there a page number for that fence? For the
We have
fence?
an 8-foot fence. How do you arrive at an 8-foot fence?
8 foot high.
Yes. How do you
Most
arrive at
towns have that in their bylaw, actually.
It's pretty standard what we do with the fence.
Yeah.
Okay. The insurance company likes it too, probably?
Whatever we do, they like.
Michael, are you referencing the 8-foot
No.
fence from?
No, I'm not going to tell you exactly how to fill out your hope sheet either. I want you to reference you, but you want to reference you, and I'll reference my the way I want.
I just looked up section 3, page 2, so I didn't know when you said that, if you had already looked it up.
Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, thanks.
he's off. So,
I'm using up, I'm trying to diversify
But I would-
as democratic as possible. And now I know more about
I
it.
do want to make,
I want to be this far.
I do want to make a point though, we're talking about the facility. So, we're talking about a cell tower, but we're talking about the facility. The cell tower facility. So one way the facility can be less visual is to require the fencing to be, say, black instead of galvanized. If that's something you feel you need to put in.
But it's not, doesn't
Nobody
make
can
them
see
see it.
it except for the owner.
Well, I'm just bringing it up as a.
It is on section 3, page 3,
So
sheet 3.
it would be unreasonable for us to require that. It wouldn't necessarily be our.
It's not visible from the road, but
It's very
it's a
fine
movement.
print.
But I'm just bringing that up as a point that there's other structures here that constitute a facility.
Yeah. And then the road doesn't have a fence, correct?
No.
No. A gate?
But there is a gate
on the
actually.
road.
There's
There's a gate
a-
now?
Yeah.
Is this property
There's a gate here?
posted?
There's no trespassing?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know, there's a gate at the very bottom of the road.
It's a chain.
It's a chain.
Whatever, there's a, where Yeah, it's something of a gate or
Yeah,
a chain or
yeah,
whatever.
the chain is no good.
Right, but we will have a gate up at our site.
You mean the road?
Further along the road?
Well, once we get closer to our site.
Yeah, around the compound, that entire area will be gated.
Yeah, I see he's
Right.
got gate posts on his plan about 100 feet up the road.
Yeah.
You're not talking right down at the,
No, no. Nope.
In the little box.
It should be on the plan right there.
It
I
is.
see secret
Yeah.
space.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yep. So,
Oh, yeah.
F is the owner will provide fencing. And such means to control will be compatible with sustaining character of the neighborhood and landscape. You can't see it from outside the property, so that would be the second one. I suppose we could require vinyl clean on the chain link or something.
That's pretty much a cleared area already, isn't it?
By the compound or no? No, I mean, it's partially cleared by the barn, but beyond the, you can see the actual tree cut line in the plan.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
It's an old hayfield that's been growing in for 20 years. It used to be a lot more open, but it's been shrinking. I've been up there a few times in my life, but not lately. We had an application for a quarry up there several years ago.
See, this is the existing.
Still a mobile home up there. Is there still a mobile home up there?
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
The trailers there.
Um,
So we're between F and G. Are we done with that?
So just on the road again, does that have to be, you're gonna be widening it? I mean, you're building on the road, aren't you? I mean,
It'll be improved, it doesn't need to be wide.
I mean, improved, yeah.
Yeah.
But pretty much what is existing is about all you need to be,
Yeah,
just
right.
improving the
Yep.
structure.
Exactly.
Even a paving?
No.
So on G, the road enters into the decision. Preserve on-site vegetation using existing road.
I guess just in terms of preserving vegetation, is there a reason not to be here in the open clearing already?
More for camouflage, will be in a vegetated area, kind of screened from anything else. In the property owner, he uses that area, that's the open field, so he didn't want us to go there.
but it's still not going to be, there's still trees around it. There's still trees around it. For any property viewing, it's still camouflaged.
Yeah, from public.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? From the clearing, in which direction is it? Is it closer to?
It's closer to Spruce Corner Road.
So,
All right.
I'm just curious, I was measuring from the clear ones. Okay.
what is this distance here? 450. How far is it this from the property line? Is it 450? It must be a 450. It's about twice the size of the two.
Where are we, H?
Sure. It will be camouflaged. That's what we agreed on.
I put specifically spruce tree camouflage,
With tapering or something.
natural shape design.
I think we want pine. If you look at the ridge lines in Ashfield, the majority of the lone trees that are sticking up high are pines. And this guy specializes in pines. Try around. You can put spruce on yours if you want. But I see a lot of pine trees sticking
I
out.
thought he said white pine. I thought he said white pine.
Yeah,
I thought he said a spruce tree would
we
be.
talked about white pine.
What was your word? Natural, what'd you say?
And the most up-to-date and natural shape design available.
Can we quote you?
Sure.
Let me see that for a minute.
Yeah.
Like that monopine. And that kind of tufty thing is what we usually see, although it's a little more bent than that on our ridge lines. The top of that tree looks a lot like what you would naturally see around here.
Yeah.
So whenever,
You go in Spruce Corner, I expect, right? Do they grow pines there?
We have a lot of white pines. Big ones.
Where, what's, are you looking at this one?
It's. We have to specify what the camouflage type of the tree is.
If that's our intent, or we can decide 10 feet below the tree line. I mean, a practical person's going to say that, you know, if you miss it by a foot, you don't have to fix it, but maybe at and above. So on your site plan, John, you got a 57-foot maple and a 53-foot hemlock. Are those remaining? Where is that? Right inside of your compound?
No, we'll be taking it out.
Okay. So that actually puts the tree line closer to 60 feet. Oh, now there's a 74-foot pine.
That only says 47 feet, right? It's right where the
I
bed
can't
is.
read that. Oh, okay. 27.1.
Okay, it's on the bend.
Yeah.
74-foot pine, 8-inch walnut. I think he's identified the more mature trees there. Not far from wetlands buffer. Under I, the facility will or will not exclude any exterior storage equipment on the site. Other than cabinets as shown on plan, most likely.
Well, I wasn't clear whether, since we're giving a written approval for what's on the plan,
Yes.
but then it won't include anything beyond that without further approval? I wasn't quite sure how to read that one.
Yep. If they want to add another cabinet besides what they showed on the plan, I think the building inspector will require a building permit for it.
Within the compound?
It's below a certain size.
Within the 8 by 8? You have to pay another building permit?
Well, it'll be an alteration. I guess you can do 10 by 20 without permit now. If it's a freestanding.
Freestanding thing, right?
Yeah, we're talking on I, right?
But we definitely need to say that what's shown on the plan is allowed.
So it will not.
I think the purpose of this is to keep it from being a bigger development than it is. You know,
Or to
we don't want them storing
Storing
an
a
extra
bunch of-
cell tower there.
storing a bunch of stuff in the
Direct somewhere else.
basically the
Mhm.
junkyard.
Sure. Even if the area around the compound looks something like.
Yeah, well, it's,
Down the one lane, on Spruce Corner Road.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
right down the one lane.
because he has no respect for a 2-lane road.
you mean in front of his operation there?
Yes,
What's blocking?
lumber,
Oh, it's wood?
mud, wood shavings.
On the pavement?
Yes,
On the road?
yes,
What's Tommy doing about it?
nothing.
That's
Well, I don't know.
definitely,
I think you should complain to the police and have them start ticketing his lumber. It's on pavement, but I couldn't get you to do that sign on Cape Street, so.
We're
Yeah.
not going there again.
Anybody in the audience wants to bug Lenny? Got a tip for you.
So, I have a question about I, because you say carriers have their own choice of what their buildings are going to be. So this plan isn't really exact to what might exist in the future, because depending on the carrier, they create their little,
Yeah, but I think it takes into account that they're what they typically use at the site, so I think it covers, if you say as shown on the plan, that should cover it.
and that would cover 5.
5, all 5 carriers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The power lines, you have some section of it is above ground, right?
It's using the existing lines that go up the driveway now to a certain point, and then there'll be one additional above ground utility pole. From that point beyond, it'll all be underground.
It's here. So this is
Yeah,
underground,
yeah.
and I think proposed one go. It looks like there are 3 poles in that lane, there'll be a 4th, and then it'll go under. I'm reading right.
I didn't count them.
I think they're labeled like 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3.
Yeah. It looks like, yeah, it's like 3 plus 1. Yeah, it looks like there's 4 existing plus 1. 4. You can see it better on the plan.
And you can see it really good if you have glasses, which I don't.
The one across the road.
Yeah.
You see that?
Oh, yeah, 4.
No, not that one.
So I have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
4th is proposed.
Oh, that's the proposed one.
That's what I mean.
No, you had it right, it was 4 plus 1.
Yeah, that was 4 plus.
You see it?
No.
2, 3, 4.
4.
That's the proposed.
Yeah, right next to it is the proposed.
See it right here? This is existing and then there's a proposed one right next to it.
You've got a number.
Only because when they go underground, they couldn't use the existing pole to do that because it's
So
already
there's actually a pole already there.
Yeah,
There's one there already.
Who owns the pole? You know?
Power
company?
I believe it's the power
It
company.
doesn't show.
The power company?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
this just shows this is 4 and proposed, so this is 4 and this is 6.
Yeah, this is 4 here, the proposed is right. The existing ones are solid, and the proposed one goes down. You see the sun.
So that's fine. This is the plan.
No, so there's 1 there, 1 there, so that's number 2. There's a 3rd one there,
This is a large
4th one here, and then the proposed one's right next to it. And from this point to the second, it's over here.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, this is a big elevation.
Yeah, so that's, you said because to support the underground wires.
On the pole itself, yeah.
It's not sure, but I mean, it's pretty much all out of sight.
Right.
It is, yeah, on the street.
Here, you can see it perfectly here. 2, 3, 4, all right? And then this is the proposal,
Oh, okay.
okay? Actually, it looks like this is there, the proposed one's behind it. Yeah. Okay. I think this is a better way to look at it.
Yeah. Especially when I'm blank.
Let's do that one for you guys, right?
Bond, oh,
Jay?
go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. And the amount agreed upon?
10%.
Yeah, we have to look up the, Ellen, why don't you put the piece of paper that was in the original application in here that said how much the construction cost?
I think it was 205.
205.
All right, I guess I got two witnesses on that, I was going to read it somewhere. You want to administrate that. I mean, when we've done it in the past, it's just gone into a local account, but it's only for a year or two.
All right.
Never floated a bond for our, whatever this is.
We use a removal bond is something that we post usually for every tower that we do.
Yeah,
It's renewed every year.
It's renewed every year.
right.
So
So do you do that with town treasurer, the town clerk?
No, we have an insurance company that issues the bond to the town. Yeah, it'd be the town administrator that they would send it to.
All right.
Do we,
I guess I'm still trying to wait for a number.
we're not going to do it by 10%? Of
10%,
205. But are we supposed to include camera costs? No.
And that's another issue.
Not the whole.
Mm.
You're on
Separate doesn't
J?
need to be in the bond.
We're K.
Or you're on K now?
Not actually knowing what it costs, it's a little difficult to put a percentage on it. Seeing as how it's just plastic and fiberglass, I bet you it's a lot easier than the rest of the tower to take down, so I'm not sure it's significant.
And were we going to put in the bond money for maintenance, or we just consider that that will cover maintenance and dismantling? I guess if it would be too much to maintain, then we just dismantle it.
no, it's a removal bond.
It's a removal.
So it's not a maintenance bond. It's a removal bond. If, what Michael was saying before, if we go away
Right.
and you guys want to remove that, the money's there to remove it. It's not a maintenance bond. It's a removal bond.
Okay.
To
So,
put it, to
If
take it
they
down.
actually don't go away and they don't maintain it for 5 years and they get orders from the building inspector, we then can use the bond to remove it. But I don't think at any point we're going to maintain any bond. And that's specifically what the bylaw says, it's a removal bond.
so the maintenance is left to the building inspector?
If something becomes a public hazard, the building, and people complain about it, or he notices it, the building inspector will issue an order. If you have a faulty elevator in the building, they'll come close it down. I'm not sure that they would still be using it without maintaining it. That would be a little silly and wouldn't work for very long.
Yeah, except for the camera is a different issue.
Right. So those are always very messy when somebody doesn't live up to, has a building, it's not living up to building code, it's not living up to the bylaws of the town, and as we saw with Son Lana's Quarry, it could go back and forth for several years. And then eventually, they usually get worked out. If they create a public hazard, ostensibly and eventually the building inspector will shut them down. I don't think this is like having families with children living in a fire trap, though, kind of public hazard. This is a tower up on a hill on private property. So in our camouflage specification, we're probably going to have to put in something about must be changed every so many years. If they don't change it, they then become in violation of a special permit, which kind of makes a zoning violation. And the building inspector presumably would start issuing orders at them, particularly if somebody bothered and asked them to do it, if they don't maintain it every so many years.
And you have to put a year on that?
The manufacturer is going to, I think it really comes down to, as recommended by the manufacturer. The manufacturer has some sort of warranty, right?
Yeah.
So it's really a maintenance issue. It wouldn't be change them every so many years. We would change them as needed. Just because they're warranted for 10 years doesn't mean they're not going to last 15.
No, that's true.
That's true.
Mhm.
Or they could last 7, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's going to depend.
But if we do a special permit for a grain building and all the paint peels off in 40 years,
Yeah, it's got to be painted.
it's a zoning violation. The building inspectors start harassing you about it.
Right.
Right.
They paint it. It's fall into the same kind of thing.
Where does the
And it's not a great system that they have, by the way. It's annoying to you, and it's annoying to us, and annoying to him, because he doesn't quite have enough power to really take care of the coals, but he can make your life miserable for a long time. Yes?
the maintenance clause to the kennel, does that go under H or is that for the building?
I think H says.
This is your vote we're working on at the end. We're going to write out all the,
Right.
and I think the answer is, how does your mind work?
Yeah, put it where you think it best goes. I need another section, which is related to section 7. Section H, excuse me, 1 through 7. Section 7, H, 1 through 7, which is, is just the special permit. That's also various voters' list. You all have that page, right?
Yep. The last page.
Page 3,
General.
you all have page 3?
Yeah, but are we
Are we done with page
L?
2?
How do we respond to L?
I think the variance will be allowed with conditions.
All right. A variance to a height of blank.
We're still putting a blank on the height.
Well, until we vote on it. I don't know what it is yet. In fact, if you all want to put on your vote sheet what you think the height should be, we could see if we can come up with an average for the plan ballot when we approach it.
22 feet.
Point sound true.
And I'm going to put in compliance with an 80-foot height will result in inadequate coverage, is my reason for voting for a variance. And will result in more towers.
It's not really a variance of the height either that we're asking. It's one of the conditions that you're varying per L. Is you don't issue variances.
It's not a legal variance under Massachusetts law. Ashfield actually gets to take the word out of the dictionary and use it our own way if we want for our bylaw, and that's kind of what we did. And I sort of regret not having called it something else now because it confuses people, but you're right, it's not a legal Massachusetts variance. It's a very issue within, and we're not the only town that's guilty of this because it's a great word.
We can use waiver.
Yes, we could use waiver.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Can you change it right now?
I don't know. We can't change the bylaw.
Oh,
My problem with waiver, I always think of Disney doing this. You waive things, and that gets you into these, what do they call a word that's spelled different ways and means different things but pronounced the same? To waive something. Just waive already has too many uses and variances.
yeah.
It has its own problems in my head. So an ocean wave is a let it go wave, is it wave your neighbor? Is it radio waves? So are we on, we're on to section 7 now. Not really using any public services.
Or doing premises.
Other than minor use of roads.
Q. Where'd you get the Q?
Yeah, two.
Oh, they said Q.
Tim's jumping ahead.
Where'd you get Q?
I know Q is.
So, no lights. Noise.
I just put, will not impact the noise by putting the generator in a cabinet with a muffler.
Vicinity of the facility to up the hill.
Yeah, I think it's in the
Further away from the road, other houses. It's going to minimize any background noise.
Using the existing road, or the existing drainage, improving existing drainage. We have a sign-off sheet about the wildlife.
How big of a generator do you use?
Oh, it's 60K.
60K?
Yeah.
And that's 160K or
Yeah.
however many, so they all share it?
Typically.
And in your experience with the generator, if the power goes out or down, you know, what is your expected turnaround time to get things restored?
Well, the generator would kick on immediately.
Yeah, I know, but how long would it be on typically?
That would depend on whatever happens, you know, if it's an emergency in town or something, or a natural disaster where the utility lines are down for an extended period of time.
So it could be on
It's at the mercy
for
of
a week.
It's at the mercy of the utility company, really.
Sure.
Sign off for those are somewhere else besides the application, right?
The what?
The sign-offs around wildlife and all that is not in this part yet.
I saw it in this folder somewhere.
So pretty much the entire compound has to be, trees are removed in there.
On the inside of the compound, yes.
And part of the road.
Do you need another copy of the Fish and Wildlife sign off? I have one here.
No, I'm sure we have one.
Well, for the purposes, we're trying to look for it, if you have it.
I do.
I'm not sure you go with- if you could.
So my unnecessary removal, avoiding or minimizing unnecessary removal of mature trees, shrubs, and other botanical assets. Is it partly that a lot of Ashfield is tree and it helps with minimizing visual impact to have it within tree area?
Well, you know, in a much bigger sense, it's what I'm trying to get at here is that you take a whole bunch of Ashfielders together, more than 5/8 of them will vote for trees. And that's what it means, is that we've been asked to worry about trees by our voters, and as opposed to a site that didn't have a road to it already and wasn't associated with a field that they could go across and so on. This is minimizing the removal of trees. It's a practical matter, forestry and cutting down trees is allowed on an acre or so without any review at all. So to take it too seriously just means that applicants will clear their land before they come see us, rather than worrying about it. But it's...
Well, we don't want towers out in the middle of the field,
No,
visually, anyway.
probably not, unless we have some other kind of camouflage.
Right, if it was shorter and heavier bonded.
Silo and all.
Silo, right.
Mhm.
I mean, to the best extent possible, we use the existing infrastructure, which is a minimization and mitigation of.
In looking for other likely sites in the neighborhood, I didn't find any that seemed to have, looked like they would be as good on coverage of this, and I certainly didn't find any that had such an easy access without changing the landscape.
Well, I mean, and there is this field, but that's closer to homes. I mean, it doesn't necessarily give us the benefits
Right.
to make it worth saving these trees. Is that the thinking?
Yeah, I suppose we could try to make them move it down the hill, but then we have to start the whole thing all over again.
No, I mean, and I'm saying it's not necessarily.
Down,
Right, so I'm just saying it's a trade-off situation
Yes.
where you say, yes, that's worth it.
I prefer those trees taken down to being closer to the north property line myself based on all of these considerations.
Right.
I look at this site already has an existing road and wouldn't feel to bury the attending lines, so when you come in the tree. You just
Under 4, the Board of Health and the Concom signed off. Groundwater and pollution is really their expertise. That's why I'm running anyways.
You have Board of Health and Board.
Concom signed off on the pollution. The owner will provide adequate safety of entrances to public ways.
This is where you want to put this in.
And there's the existing.
Well, we're not even at the point where we need to require parking places, so I think this is for stores and for parking lots. I'm not sure that I wouldn't think they need anything other than a driveway like any other property has an area one. I would say they're putting a gate on the existing driveway. And that seems like adequate public safety.
And emergency services can get through everything.
You're gonna give the fire department a key to your gate, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and you're responsible, you're responsible in your lease, I'm assuming, right down to the road, to the town road?
Yes, we have, you get these.
Yeah.
Who gets the key?
Fire department's gonna want a key to that. They're gonna want the fire department to have a key with it. Their insurance company's probably gonna want the fire department to have a key with it.
You said like maintaining the road.
Hmm?
Like maintaining the road.
Yeah, I'm just wondering where they, where their responsibility is. In other words, in terms of public safety and whatnot, you will have, you'll be
It's basically a
responsible
driveway out to the road.
Huh?
It's a driveway out to the road, just like
Yeah,
it is right now.
Right. No, I didn't know if maybe you started your responsibility up the existing, road right there now.
Yes,
So, that's just a question. Now, you got, I'm trying to think of something else.
Did you have something to say?
No, so were you asking a question, or?
No, I was wondering that where your responsibility was on maintaining the road and public safety and so on and so forth would all be down to it's the road that you have here on the plan all the way to the public road.
Right.
And we don't actually have power over driveways anyways much, other than
Well, this would be
the first 10 or
considered part of the
15
facility.
feet. Yeah,
Do
right.
they have to plow? Does it matter?
No, nobody's living there.
But
So,
it's like there's a
12-foot. What do you do with snow?
What do we do with it?
Yeah,
What do you mean?
Plow
yeah, is it plowed on a?
On an as-needed basis.
Yeah. But I think Lenny probably takes care of that anyways.
Yeah, he usually plows all the way up to his barn, so we would have to plow to our compound from there, which is not very far, but it would be on an active basis.
What happens if you get a fire in January and you haven't plowed in 2 weeks? I'm sorry, we're going back to hearing here, but
It's steel, it doesn't, something on it that typically runs.
yeah. Under 6, I'm going to say it will have an impact on neighborhood character that will be mitigated by camouflage and height restrictions.
Did you put a will on that?
Will not be compatible?
Will be compatible, yes, but I'm going to say it will have an impact on the neighborhood character that needs to be mitigated.
I went the other way. I said it will not, but minimize.
Okay. 7 is the big one. All other additional requirements, it's not an alteration. It's not off-premises signs. We can look at driveways, for one. Setbacks are all in excess of the other setbacks.
I don't think this is even considered a driveway.
Driveways, page 7.
It's not a building, it's a lot.
No.
Well, it could be. We're taking it out as a way. Neeson. I suppose he has no real principal use other than light industry or whatever he has over there.
There's no sign there now, is there, at that driveway?
A sign?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
So we
Building on the water. And trailer.
see, so it's already got suitable frontage. And number 3 is basically saying that the driveway is not allowed to wash out onto public ways, which they're not working on that part of it much anyways. We should worry more about other things on public ways out there than this driveway, perhaps. I'd love to see a pile of lumber articulated. It's a good idea.
That's to be potential hazard. I mean,
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
You use that road all the time.
It'd be scary.
Yeah. You get a YouTube video caught ticketing the lumber. It's 10 o'clock already, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So I don't think this is a driveway.
No, I don't think any of these other parts of the bylaws.
There's no other issue here at all. So it just will.
And then my suggestion is to write the conditions you're expecting to see on the back of the last page. To summarize them, finish it, fit it, and put the signature down there.
I think to do with this, we need to transcribe.
It's up to you.
Pretty messy.
You can do it if you want.
Anybody need another copy?
So you guys are copying order? I have a feeling that with this thing going on with my wrist, if I copy it over, it really won't be much more legible.
Okay.
So I can read my own writing. Height. You guys interested in rating your favorite height on your note sheet and passing them in, see what we come up with? I'm going to put it down next to the signature.
Mine isn't even done, right?
Do you have to turn it in? Can you rewrite it? During this week?
What's our thinking here?
Well,
I can write my thing here and just hand it to you. And Let's just say this is my recommendations. I mean,
Well,
and then just go along with whatever you want to do. I mean, have your choice.
I mean, really, the decision isn't going to do anything other than reflect what was decided why. And you're in the minutes along with the rest of us. We based on minutes, and based on the bylaws. I don't think there's any problem with you going away and having a good time. Don't worry about it. And
I wouldn't let this work.
the real question is, can I read your writing? Can I read your writing now? And, yeah, I can read your writing. Today, anyways.
No, I can give you this. I mean, you can get it. I mean, I've expressed all my feelings about it. I mean, you could probably answer all these.
I think that was fine, and you should maybe Xerox it before you go, or just turn it in this or whatever.
What did we just, what was the discussion we had when we talked about the antenna that's going on top with the camera? It won't really be visible, like the camera will end and it won't really be visible. I can't totally remember.
This is the town?
No, because
The
they
antenna?
want to move the antenna that's on the top of the current tower to the one this way. Yeah, which adds another 5 feet. if I remember correctly.
So, yeah.
And I'm just curious in terms of, you know,
It's just a whip.
so like the camera will end and then the whip will go up and it won't really be visible? Is that?
I think there's a whip on the existing tower, isn't there?
Yeah.
So you can't see that. At least from Spruce Corner Road, you can't see it. Maybe if you
So the camera would not
stop.
cover that? Camera, I'm just, someone.
I don't see how camouflage could cover that.
Okay,
If it's sticking up 5 feet, how are you gonna?
yeah. I'm just trying to get the visual in terms of how high above the tree line it's looking, it's
And
appearing.
if the thing's painted bright orange, it may be visible, so.
I think the camera is likely to cover half of it.
Maybe cover the base of it.
You know, if you fuzz around a square top tower like that,
It would be
it's
going up higher regardless of
Yes.
the antenna.
I mean, you could write that the whip antenna needs to be gray or, you know, nondescript.
Is it going to be the same exact width?
No, it'll probably be a new antenna, it'll be something very similar. There's no way you can put camouflage around the whip antenna.
Right.
Top.
Yeah, I mean, if-
I more want to know whether that adds more height to the visual impact of the tree
If you
in
put,
terms of how far it is above the tree line.
painted it,
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it'll be 5 feet above the branches, but like you said, you really can't see it from a distance because of the whip.
I'd rather it not be included in a sense, because that's just going in higher for what you're going to see beyond the tree line.
I mean, it's just a thin little whip, you're not gonna see it.
Look up the town antenna, Bill's drawing, but I know that,
It'll be
It
similar.
would be the same thing pretty much.
like the, what Lenny has there now,
Yeah, the whip antenna on top.
you put two together, they don't show up more.
Well, they wouldn't be right,
They couldn't be right
opposite
together.
sides of the top of the tower.
Right.
I mean, they're not that far apart.
Just sort of right here, like, see what I mean by that, right? That's not, I don't know if it's a angry word or not, but.
You should be.
I guess this goes with.
Yes, that's the one he
That's
gave,
the one
or
he
it
gave
goes
us,
to
yes.
us. Okay.
Well, I have some questions, being that I'm not voting necessarily, but,
I think you are voting, aren't you? Are we voting today, or are we just discussing our vote? Now that we've gone through the end of this, I feel like we should all know whether we want to vote today or not. Alan?
there are some specifics here in terms of conditions that we have to discuss.
Okay,
Start discussing.
what you want to know?
Well, the camouflage, we need to get that in some verbiage. Right?
Yes.
And where would that be included?
Age.
It turns out that Thor doesn't know how to write or doesn't know about architectural specifications. And so I volunteered I gave him a rough draft on architectural specification for that kind of product. I'm going to go sit down with him for a few hours and make him describe his product. What materials it's made out of, what its variations are, and yada, yada, yada. And then we will be able to say it's an or equal specification. In other words, you can build a house and you can say, I want craft-made cabinets or equal. And craft-made cabinets has hardwood fronts and plywood sides and glued gussets and stiles that are 2.5 inches wide on their shaker doors and yada, yada, yada. I'm just going to get that basic information from him of strength materials and variation sizes and colors, and stick it into a specification, and then they can refer to that as what they have to do.
And that would be then attached to this application.
I think, no, we're going to say or equal to products by environmental integration of Orange, Mass. And at that point, Thor will be in a position where if they want to find out what equal means to this piece of paper. Thor and I started on this week.
Yeah, well, I'm
Probably
just curious where
going
the
to
piece of
spend a few
paper
hours
is
this weekend.
going to building inspector, is it filed with the court, in the registry?
Building inspectors usually have copies of those with projects, yes.
Okay.
Do you have any CSI specifications on this stuff? I noticed you didn't put any in.
Specifications with regard to?
Architectural specifications.
Monopine,
No, on your tower.
No, that would be submitted to the building inspector.
yeah, is that what
Does your engineer give them a little booklet full of
Oh, yeah,
how to do things?
Yeah, we have to do tower borings and all that stuff.
Yeah, you can't do any of that, they do the borings, and then there's specific requirements to the wind load in this particular region and everything else.
Then we order the tower, give them all that
And then there's,
information,
eventually you get to the chapter on paint.
and they engineer it.
Yeah.
Paint, whatever, but usually, if we do a standard monopole tower, it's galvanized, a galvanized tower.
Sure.
Whatever the, monopole.
So you probably have a section on what the galvanization is.
There's a whole book.
A whole book on it.
That'll be submitted to the building inspector.
So our intent is to propose is to be working with, or to give you a chapter on the camouflage.
Fine, or you can just say that in the conditions that we're building such a height monopine tower.
We're a little concerned with Thor writing it because he's in the business to sell this product, and if he writes it in a way that's beneficial to him, he's got a little bit of an advantage.
It's just wrong for us to have to go by
Yeah,
his,
no, that's
because it's his product, we don't need to do that.
I'm only going to make sure that he does the effect we need. I don't think anybody's going to argue whether it's a slightly different thing. I did say I'd give you an or equal specification because I don't know what else to do. I can't have you just go buy the cheapest thing possible and slap it up there. I have to come up with something that has the specific variations that he's talking about that make it possible to have these look a lot more like real trees than, say, the photographs you guys sent us.
Well, the thing with Thor, I understand, is what he said. If you remember what he said, his are the only trees that do this. So if you want a tree that does exactly what his does, and his are the only ones that do it, that means that we got to buy it from him, and we don't want to do that.
Well, I don't think he's the only one in the world that's doing that.
Well, I mean, from what he said.
Thinks it. But the reality is the entire state of Connecticut is going for this kind of, and I don't, if Thor is still the only one doing that, I'd be surprised. I bet you you're going to find other manufacturers. And from our point of view, it really doesn't matter. We're looking
That,
for
and
this
which
level
is
of quality.
back to what I said before.
We found somebody that can do it.
But we're definitely interested in having a tree that looks like this, not this.
Yeah.
That does not help
No
us.
tube trees.
This helps us.
Uh-huh.
Maintain
It just so
rural
happens
character.
he's providing a picture of what we would like to see it look like. So we have to go from something.
Right.
Well, you can, in your decision, you could easily explain that you want a tapered type of look without having to go to Thor.
Right.
Have specific scheme.
That's true, but you, again, looking at what the examples of what he's showing, we can write a spec that follows what's being shown in that picture. I don't care where you, if you use Thor or Anti-M, you know, it's got to meet the spec.
Yeah, it's just hard to say because we don't know what he's going to say, so we're just a little concerned about that.
Sure, I
maybe,
can understand.
maybe when we get it, it won't be a big deal at all.
We just don't want to be steered into buying a product from him specifically.
But it doesn't mean that you wouldn't necessarily.
Wouldn't mean that we wouldn't necessarily buy it from him.
So you don't have an issue with him his company personally.
No, we just don't want to be told what we have to buy, who we have to buy something from.
Because then he can charge a lot of money.
Between the two of us, I think we'll write an adequate spec. Because
Yeah, our main thing is if he writes the specs and we can only get it from him based on his specs, he can charge almost whatever he wants. Because
He's not going to write a spec because he doesn't know how.
Yeah, he doesn't.
I'm helping his
It's a little concerning,
business, and he's helping our planning board by giving him a little free consulting on how to write a spec. I don't think I have any intention of tying your hands so much that, you know, the length of needles has to be exactly 3 1/4 inches, sort of thing. But the variation in branches is going to have to be part of it, because I don't see how you could possibly do this otherwise.
Very good.
Let's see. So that was answering your question about the camo. That's in process. I think you're just going to have to trust me and Alan to do it.
All right. Oh, yeah, well, I was really not concerned about that. I'm just wondering what sort of a document we're putting this on, and how is it going to get to basically the building inspector?
That's going to get attached to our
Attached to
decision.
the decision.
Yeah.
Be part of the decision.
Right.
Okay.
I'm going to make it read like the specifications building inspectors used to being on road bases or stone walls. It's kind of amazing, you take one of those sections and you steal it, and you can almost just change the nouns and nothing else, because they're so formatted. It's, but that's a sideshow. Which other questions you have, Ken?
Well, the other, it's just what we're, the other question is what are we going to finally vote on in terms of height and
Yeah,
carriers? And
that's still my
and,
remaining question.
the extended, extendability.
So, there's a bunch of ways to arrive at that. We could all just put in a favorite number and come up with an average. We could just go around and around in a circle about it. The bond and the generator noise is clear. But the height and the extendability. So it looks like everybody's copying their stuff over.
Yeah, I'm not. It will be here until midnight.
Yeah, it's getting time that we're going to start doing dumb things. We're going to finish up pretty soon.
Well, you won't have this done tonight, right? So you won't have this done tonight, right?
I would prefer we vote tonight. And I think we've arrived at everything we need except for the final. Is it 120? Is it 125? Is it 130?
Right, well, you asked people to write it on the bottom and pass it over.
That was a suggestion. I don't recall a hearing a majority on it. Unless I missed it. So does everybody just want to write their favorite height on the bottom and pass it over?
Yeah.
On the bottom, okay.
And put it next to your
Right
signature.
there? The rough draft or the real thing?
I don't care. We could just do it on business cards and a hat kind of thing too, you know.
I'll pass it over. Well, I guess if I'm voting, this is legitimate.
Right.
This is America.
All right. Looks like we're averaging 120 feet. 125 and 3 120s and 115. You can check one of those. Does anybody want to make a motion that we have a final vote? It looks like 120 is going to win on the average there. Or should we wait and have a final vote next week?
One thing that has to be mentioned, really, is that in order for this to go through, you have to have a unanimous vote.
If you're not present.
If I'm not present.
Yes.
That's correct.
So,
So that's why we prefer to vote on it tonight, because 5 votes is better than 4. Even if it isn't unanimous, it's better than 4.
Correct.
So really, I guess, depends upon how confident you guys are in, if you want this extra time to sleep on it, or whatever you might do, or not have an awful feeling that we're in a hurry here.
5 months?
Okay, let's vote.
Even Doug Mollison thought we were going slow, and I've always thought of him as one of the slowest people I know.
So I was just noticing that in this spec, that the tree line's put at 60 to 75 feet. So I guess we've been talking about it at 80 a lot, but this shows 60 to 75, so.
And trees grow.
Yeah, that's why we talk about 80. It's when they die around here. It's
About
actually
80 feet.
Walter's number. So,
Sounds like people want to vote.
well, I've invited someone to make a motion, and I've gotten 2 comments so far.
I motion that we vote tonight.
Okay, do I hear a second?
So are we voting on the height?
Well,
I
first
think
there's got to be a second.
There needs to be a
Anybody say, I
second.
second. Now we can discuss.
I think we're voting on 120 feet, because our straw poll had 115, 125, and 320s.
Yes, I understand that. My question is, are we voting tonight on height, or are we voting on the entire application? I was just curious what that for.
The entire application. I think the motion is to vote on
Is that correct?
120 feet camouflage.
Is your
That was
motion
what I
to vote
motioned.
on the application?
Yes.
Mhm.
Now, the other thing too is that I'm not going to see how it's written. That's the only thing that,
That's what we asked you. Were you comfortable with Michael writing out the decision in
Can
your
you email it to
absence?
you?
hmm?
Can you email it to
No,
you?
because
No?
oh, you could, yeah.
Why not?
Will you be picking up
You
right
can
now?
But what I say is it really shouldn't make any difference. So, but not that I'm going to be saying anything different anyway. I'm just covering bases here.
Mhm. So,
So are you saying that, Ken, because once it's written, then it can't be changed?
No.
You're saying
No.
you want to have a say in how the decision is written?
Well, I mean,
You want to be
I'm
able to-
voting, making the, just as Judy said, I'm voting, making the assumption that you guys are going to write it up in the same way I'm voting for. And I don't know what I'm voting for. But I do, so I'm fine with that, that's fine.
Well, right now, there's a motion simply to vote on the application tonight. The motion isn't to approve or deny. Right now, the motion on the table is to,
no,
They're not-
this is a motion to approve.
well, I thought it's a, sorry for the
To approve.
the nitpick.
All right,
It's just
there's a
that we're going to
vote.
vote. My understanding is that we're going to vote tonight. If this is to approve or deny the application.
That was my motion.
Is that the motion?
That was my motion.
All right, I stand correct.
And if I may clarify, there's 2 approvals. One is when we vote, and the other is when we hand it to the town clerk. And the clock, the Chapter 48 clock, does not start until we hand it to the town clerk. And in between the time we vote and the time we hand it to the town clerk, she's expecting us to have a bunch of paragraphs about why we voted this way. And this often takes a week or 2. And this is what we will be working on next week at our meeting. I will be doing some work this weekend. So there's really two approvals we have to do. One is to vote, and then one is to get ready and give it to the town clerk. And not until she gets her decision will the clock start ticking on 48. So that's the part of the approval Ken's going to miss if he votes tonight, is the giving to the town clerk and writing that stuff.
And we're approving it without conditions perfectly written.
Right.
To be approved with conditions.
And that covers how, whatever we end up making the
to
conditions
be
at the next meeting.
Specified in the decision.
If it makes you feel better, we're doing a lot better than Congress usually does.
Exactly.
Oh, it's only gonna get worse.
We are voting on these 4 conditions that have been written on the vote sheets, but we're not voting on the exact reasons. And most of the decision is likely to be not the conditions, but why the testimony led to our decision, and why the application led to our decision.
So I guess I would say I'm leaning towards changing my mind on extending it in terms of feeling like 120 is as high as I would go without starting to impact the rural character and make the camouflage look ridiculous. But I don't know whether that has to be discussed at this point. I think 2 trees would be less impacting and on the character than it is.
You probably agree with what the law says.
Yeah, because the purpose of,
I think that, Lauren,
I think the purpose of the bylaw is still going to the main purpose of the full bylaws, which is to maintain rural character. So I don't want 5 towers, but I would be okay with 2.
Well, let's back up again. There's a motion to approve or deny, right? To grant or not grant the application. But we know there's conditions attached. A separate motion, Michael, or is this a motion amended with conditions?
I think we're having a discussion of Julie's motion.
Because my problem is, would I approve it if it had the extension?
Yeah, it's relative to how we vote on approving or denying. My motion would say, that's why I asked, what I wrote was her motion was to vote on it, not to whether to approve or deny the application, we're simply voting on it. We're trying to decide if we're going to vote tonight or next week. That's what I thought the motion was about. But you're saying the motion is actually to either approve it.
That's correct.
Okay. Because that's different.
So I would vote to approve the application at 120 feet. I would not necessarily vote to approve
Wait, so
it.
that's why I'm asking. There's a motion to approve to vote on the approval or denial of the application.
With conditions.
With conditions attached.
But it's the conditions matter to my approval or not.
Right.
I think what he's saying is that you can't do that.
No, she certainly can. She can,
Well, I mean, you certainly can vote whatever you want.
she can vote against it.
I need to know what I'm voting for. That's what I'm
Yes.
saying. I need to be clear about what I'm voting for.
And I think what we're voting for is that there's a 10% bond. The height is 120 feet. The camo is basically something like integrated. It's an extendable tower, and generators must be enclosed in cabinets with mufflers. Those seem to be our conditions. So you don't want it to extend up to 150 feet. Other people don't want them in that building another tower. I would point out that both of those are incredibly unlikely.
Both of those are what?
Incredibly unlikely.
That's what I'm betting.
That we're going to get more than 3 carriers in the first place. And particularly adding this camo onto it.
Okay, so again, and I know it's late and we're tired, but there's a motion, but the motion confuses me. Because bear with me here, okay? Because your motion should say, I vote to...
Well, I can change my motion.
Right, well, let me just finish. Your motion should say, I make a motion to approve this application, or I make a motion with the following conditions.
No, I can change
Or
that.
my motion is to deny this application on these grounds. So all I'm saying is, if you're just saying, I make a motion that we vote on this application, then one of us should say, I would like to amend that motion and say we'll vote on it provided these conditions are considered, or something like that. See what I'm saying? It may sound nitpicky,
I
but...
would withdraw my
Okay.
motion
Thank you.
to approve and
Well, you see your
State
motion. Okay, go ahead.
my motion that we approve this application with conditions as stated by Michael.
And
You
can
want
you repeat those conditions, Michael?
120 foot height.
120 foot height, 10% bond, camo with maintenance. Generators must be enclosed in cabinets with mufflers. And truth is, Lauren's doing a good job here because this is the vaguest one, must be extendable. Extendable how much? Would that help? If we said, if we were voting on extendable by 10 or 15 feet instead of 20 or 30,
No, I pretty much feel like we're not in rural character. Camouflage is going to look really bad if we go above 120.
fair enough.
Okay, so right now, there's a motion on the table to approve the application with the following conditions. 120 foot height, 10% performance bond, camouflage with maintenance, generators and cabinets with mufflers, and 5 was an issue about extendability.
So how does everybody else feel about the amount of extendability? Are we talking about 10 feet? Are we talking about 20 or 30 feet of extendability in your minds?
Well, my feeling is that we won't get an application for more than 3 carriers, and even if we get a fourth, it's probably only 10 feet.
I would say that, number one, 120 feet maximum height, no extendability.
All right. It sounds like the extendability is going to lose the vote, so I think we should discard it and move ahead without that condition.
Okay, so let me reread the motion really quickly. The motion is to approve the special permit application with the following conditions. 120 foot maximum height, 10% bond, camouflage with maintenance, generators and cabinets with mufflers. And we need a second.
We're looking at you.
I'll second it.
You'll second?
I didn't know it needed to be me.
It doesn't have to be you.
It's slightly better than it is.
Yes.
now we've got a second, and now it's open for more discussion.
Okay. Any more discussion on this?
So my question would be to Ken, given that we've gotten this far now, this vote was taken tonight, you go away, the decision needs to be written up, obviously, with you gone.
Right.
So, I guess my question is, are you confident that the board will write a decision
Yes.
without your input? Or do you feel the need to review it? In which case...
No, or I can just choose not to vote right now. And that's, yeah, you know.
Does anybody out there feel like they're watching paint dry at this point?
You know what, I just want to do this right.
But no, I'm all set with that.
It wasn't for your benefit, it was
You
for
can
them.
be
I was
asked, I don't
just
care. I want to be-
applauding the fact that they're patient enough to sit through this.
You've had a second, and actually, you wondered if there's any amendments. I just have a question, how you guys think about that.
About the no extension? It's up to you. There won't be a second tower up there. I can tell you that.
There won't be a second, you mean, you wouldn't put another
No,
tower?
we've not put it on the tower.
No, but we're leaving it open to competition, right? That's the
Right,
only thing we have to do. If other companies come in and they really want them, then they have the same requirements.
Yeah.
So if another company would come in, say a fourth carrier, and there's not one on the tower, that means there could be another tower somewhere.
That's what that means.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So why wouldn't you want to make it extendable?
Yeah, it seems kind of silly.
Well, that's really that's what
Right.
we're talking about right now, is whether, that's the reason that we
From
started off
the
at the
beginning,
beginning.
yeah.
Keep in mind that this area is already,
Tower.
it's already a working, running mill. So, and there's already a tower up there. So by putting our tower up there with those two things in mind, it's not really changing the character of the neighborhood, because it's really a commercial operation.
Yeah, well,
Right, but
Going
the
on
rest of the neighborhood is not.
tell the residents that.
And if they're in their homes looking, I mean, if they're in their homes looking at a 150-foot monopole with no camouflage, they would definitely feel like it changed.
I'm not talking about that. That's off the
Yeah,
table.
but I'm saying,
Right.
even if they're looking at 150 with the best camouflage, I think they're gonna be they're gonna feel like, they're gonna feel like they did in me.
Right.
But I do feel like it makes a difference whether you're at 150 or 120.
All right, what I'm saying is I think you're making a mistake if you don't allow it to be extendable, because then if somebody does come and they want to put a fourth carrier in, they're going to build another tower.
Right, and it'll
that-
be
and you're-
camouflaged and will look like a tree.
If you want
As much
multiple
as
towers
possible.
in the same area, then that's fine, but that's what I thought we were trying to avoid
Yeah.
Right.
from the beginning.
So you want two towers. I'm saying you wouldn't mind seeing two towers?
My point was that if there are two towers camouflaged and they're lower, I think it maintains the rural character better than one tower at 150 feet, whatever it has on it. That's my opinion.
Okay.
What's going on is Lauren is taking a slightly different interpretation of which parts of the criteria you think are more important than the others. It's her right.
That is all right. Just want to make sure she understands it, because we don't want her to vote one way and then someone comes along and now there's two towers.
Yeah, it'll be your
I just
fault.
want to make sure.
That's fine.
You're welcome.
So just understand the differences. But we would prefer a vote tonight with all of the board members before you go on your vacation.
But I was just gonna say,
You know, because you
we
don't need
could,
to think about
we could
that.
debate this some more and vote another night.
But the motion is on the table, right?
It can be retracted.
Motion is on the table. Further discussion? You have 10 seconds.
I've said my
I don't
piece.
think that,
So,
all set.
all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Have you marked that down on your vote sheets and passed them in?
So I was trying to ask this before. So once we vote, this absolutely has to go in tonight?
Yeah, that's part of the vote. So you want to work on it for a while longer?
Well, I don't have it.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on how much, I mean, this isn't the decision.
This and this have to go in tonight. I don't really care if you do this, the rest of this all weekend, you know?
Okay.
It has to all be whatever you think it is by next time we meet, though. Yes?
So is this unanimous, yes?
I was unanimous, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated.
And we'll have a decision in a few weeks. Your final decision.
The written decision.
Thank you for working with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Enjoy your trip. You won't be thinking about somebody in there.
He's been checking his email every day.
They had pretty good coverage, despite all the mountains.
Well, at least we're faster than Congress.
Sorry.
That's not much of a standard to aspire to.